If you are looking for tips and tricks on how to make your own food photography backdrops, then watch this video and I think it will give you some great ideas. Welcome back to the Silly Kitchen. This is another food photography episode, and I will tell you now, I failed art class in high school. Actually, I was told not to sign up for art class. That's how bad it was. So if I can do this, you can do this too. And you are not going to need to spend a ton of money. If you have the budget, just go buy some great backdrops. Awesome. But if you want to try doing it yourself with maybe 20 bucks, 30 bucks to your name, that is all it's going to cost you, because I think all of the stuff I used in this video was repurposed, borrowed, and I just had to buy a few things. So let's get right to it. What do we need? We need some sort of board. So my recommendation is plywood, or also going into friends and family's garages and asking them what kind of stuff they have that they're not using from old projects. If you're buying plywood or you're finding pieces, the only recommendation I really have is the thickness. You want it to be a solid board so that you're not getting kind of curves, or if you're moving it, you're not bending it. I used 1/4 inch thick piece of plywood for the ones that I was looking for, and then the other things that I found that I borrowed might have been a little bit thinner, but sturdy enough to be able to, lay flat and be sturdy to hold plates and food and things like that. The other thing you need is paint. Again, the only real tip here is avoid glossy and shimmery paint when you're working for when you're looking for what to paint your plywood or your materials with. It's not that it's wrong, it's that you're gonna have a more difficult time with lighting and shine and dealing with that when you're taking the actual picture. So flat, matte, anything that is not going to be glossy will likely work. I ended up using some regular indoor paint, as well as I bought a set of acrylic paints that I could mix and make my own colors with. The next thing you might need is a paintbrush, or use some rags or sponges that you like, dish sponges, because those make for good painting utensils as well. So now that you've purchased, borrowed, or stolen, you borrowed your materials, where do we go from there? So thankfully I have friends and family, thank you Dad and John, that know how to use power tools and are able to cut these pieces to size. Or if there's old materials that you found in the wood shed, you want to get rid of, the hard edges, sand them down, cut them to size. So thank you, someone else did that for me. And you want to have a big enough piece that you have foreground, background, and enough of a tabletop for all of your food photography. So 2x4, 2x3, 3x4, those would be kind of the sizes that I have in the cut pieces. If you can get them all the same size, good for you. That will make it easy to move multiple things around your studio house or wherever you're shooting. And then we need to paint. So I started with my plywood, and I did test a few little pieces of plywood just to see how the acrylic paint would work. And I had one of my pieces already primed with just regular white flat primer. So I'm keeping that white because you can see the texture through that plywood still, like there's nice grain and lines coming through. But double side your plywood, why not? If there's two sides, use them both. So the other side, I wanted to go with a blue tone. What I did is I mixed a little bit of blue and white acrylic and got it to that soft kind of powdery blue that I wanted. And I used a sponge just to simply make strokes across, and kind of kept going until I got the fade and the lines that I wanted. Go in the same direction every time you make a line, or kind of zigzag it around, because you want kind of that continuous pattern or flow. And I gotta tell you, this blue backdrop turned out wonderful. I also found some green paint in my parents' house, just regular indoor wall paint that they used, I think, in one of their rooms. I tested it. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't shimmery. I was like, okay, let's take this random scrap piece of flooring that my dad had and let's just do a brush stroke. Again, same direction, because I want some of that white to still come out. I want texture in my backgrounds. I don't just want flat pieces of paper. Otherwise, I would just buy flat pieces of paper. Make sense? Are you with me so far? So what I did for this one is I just used a regular paintbrush and kind of made sure that it all went in the same direction, let it dry for a little bit, and did another layer just to kind of make sure that there was enough green. Green is a wonderful food photography color because just think of all the ingredients that you would use in your cooking or your styling that are green and that can kind of pull that all together. Avocados, apples, lettuce, herbs. There's so many things that can kind of flow with that color. So I did the same thing with the other piece of plywood. I actually kept one of them, one of the sides bare because I really liked that wood grain that was on there with that texture. So the other side I decided to make kind of a crazy purple color, a light gray, just kind of thinking of all the colors that I could make that were all different for variety in my kind of portfolio of backdrops, and that would really work with different foods that I could think of. So those really turned out so great, so easy. And again, like I think I spent, acrylic paint was 35 bucks Canadian. And I still have tons left after doing that because you really don't need a lot when you're just kind of layering a little bit and not doing full, like a full paint on it. And then most of the plywood was borrowed or found. So yeah, paintbrushes, sponges, a couple bucks here and there. So under 40 bucks, and I made multiple backdrops. Now the one more intricate background that we did make, and I say we as in I supervised and my dad did all the work, is that we got a thinner piece of plywood. It was about 1/8 of an inch. And what we did is we glued and screwed some old wood that came from, I think it came down from their fence, and I had it in my studio and I would just lean it up against the wall and use it as a backdrop that way. But I thought, well, I have tons of these pieces. I don't use them that often. Let's actually make a board out of it. So we utilized some construction glue onto the plywood, glued them together, clamped it all down so that that glue would really stick and stay for at least 24 hours. And then just because some of the pieces of wood, they weren't perfectly flat, they had kind of bent and curved a little bit through wear and tear of being outside, what we also did is just put a couple screws in the back of the plywood through to the pieces of wood. And this will give me a really nice linear kind of backdrop to use as more of a natural wood. Let's take a look at how these actually turned out when it comes to food photography. So let's look at that green backdrop that was part of a piece of a floor that I painted, and I wanted to photograph something that had green in it but was very light, bright, and vibrant. So I had some sushi, I plated it on a white plate, put it on the backdrop, and kind of used a really soft depth of field to bring it all together. And I love it, it worked out so great. A piece of old floor and some paint we found, boom. The blue background, I might consider this one my favorite because so far it's just been so beautiful and nice. And I have a set of bowls that actually have that light blue and that light green in them that just pair perfectly with this background. If you're doing any light and bright photography, keeping one of these plywoods white and flat is really, really important because you've got this beautiful light bouncing off of the white and then utilizing all different kind of white accessories and punching the color of the actual product out. Again, that's working so well for me so far. And last but not least, waiting those 24 to 48 hours for that glue to hold and everything to stick. This old fence that is now a great backdrop can be laid flat or have it standing up in the background as a background type shot when you're shooting 3/4 or, you know, kind of that portrait type look. I love the way that natural wood just kind of photographs and absorbs a little bit of light but has all that texture too. If you have any questions about what I did, maybe I forgot to mention something in the video, please leave me a comment below. I'll be happy to answer it. Try it yourself, you know, save a couple bucks by making it yourself. And you know, it's actually kind of fun for someone who is not a visual artist when it comes to that kind of painting, drawing. I was a little nervous how it was going to turn out, but so happy with the results. If you like these food photography videos and you're learning, please, I'll kind of link it up here and down below, the link to my playlist of all my food photography content, and there will be more. I will be talking about food styling, how to use your camera better, lighting, all those types of things that result in fabulous photos. Thank you for coming by to the Silly Kitchen, the food photography edition, and I'll see you again soon.